Breaking news. Mark Consuelos was terrorized by a bunch of dudes who were farting at the gym. Not since Watergate has there been a scandal of this magnitude to rock the very foundation of our great nation. Thankfully, his handsome nostrils survived to share the ordeal. It's a tale as old as time and as pungent as Limburger cheese in a car without air conditioning. The Scream 7-star, 54, recounted his olfactory nightmare on Thursday's Live with Kelly and Mark, according to EW. It was during a groundbreaking segment on high-tech underwear that can analyze farts when Consuelos said, "I was at the gym. This is when I was in Atlanta last January. It was a really nice gym, like a 2-story gym. People wore headphones. I don't. I like to be aware of what's going on." He added, "There were a couple guys that were just letting it fly. One guy letting it fly across from me loud. He was sitting down. I was sitting down. I tried to make eye contact, like, come on, man." About 10 minutes later, another guy. I'm like, "What's going on in this gym?" But like, loud. Let this be a lesson to us all. Maybe skipping the gym is the healthier option. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time Consuelos has suffered the wrath of tenacious toots. Ripper recalled another occasion when Mark faced a barrage of booty burps. By the way, that's the official medical term. My uncle, may he rest in peace, I don't think he'd mind me telling this story. He would take his hearing aids out, and he'd forget to put them back in. And he would let it rip because he thought we couldn't hear it. He thought he was sneaking him out right there at the Thanksgiving dinner table. You looked at me, and you go, "He doesn't hear that, does he?" Look, it may not be pleasant, but flatulence is a natural body function. Fortunately, we have our best and brightest working on state-of-the-art solutions. Right, Kelly? Now they've got smart underwear. These are researchers developing smart underwear to track wearers' intestinal gas, Ripa said during the episode. She elaborated that volunteers are wanted to test out the device. They said to think of it like a continuous glucose monitor, but for farts. Consuelos joked that he would only be into this thing if it gave you a rank. Like, "Oh, that was good. Congratulations." Duration? Oh, smell no. The headline that should have been stamped in neon across every treadmill in the city began, as many great tragedies and comedies do, with an equipment malfunction. Only this time the casualty was not the treadmill. It was the sanctity of a gentleman's nostrils. Mark had flown into Atlanta on a gray January morning, overcast, the kind of weather that makes coffee taste like a necessity and airports feel like liminal spaces between two different diets. He checked into a hotel with a gym that looked, on paper, like Midwestern luxury. 2 stories, lots of chrome, soft lighting, the kind of place with friendly staff who call you sir, and a juice bar that sells $8 smoothies with chia seeds and the faint whiff of superiority. He liked hotels like that. He liked knowing where the emergency exits were, where the coffee was brewed, and crucially, who was in his immediate environment. On that particular morning, he decided to run upstairs before a rehearsal. He liked the second floor because there were fewer people streaming in with headphones and selfie sticks and the psychological armor that earbuds provide. When you're not listening to music, you have to pay attention, he thought. It keeps you honest. Besides, if you're going to watch someone else's workout choices with a mildly judgmental curiosity, you might as well notice whether their squat form is a crime against knees. The gym's layout was generous. Rows of machines, a squat rack that smelled faintly of chalk and masculinity, and a bank of treadmills that hummed like a choir of obedient appliances. It was almost idyllic. The first 10 minutes were textbook. Warm-up jog, a few strides, a polite nod exchange with a man who was doing lunges in his own private world. Mark was in the middle of his set when he heard it, first subtle, then impossible to ignore, like a trumpet that had been denied its dignity. At first he wasn't sure. The sound could have been a bench creaking, a shoe squeak, a dropped weight. But the man across from him, mid-bench press and mid-Instagram posture, lifted his face with the same oblivious pride as if he'd just invented gravity. And then it happened again, a bolder, brassier interrogation of the air. Mark stared, not out of cruelty, but for reconnaissance. The cardio room became a theater of microgestures, raised eyebrows, the furtive scan of eyes, a collective intake of breath that smelled not of fear, but of something more immediate. "What's going on in this gym?" Mark said aloud, more to the universe than to anyone in particular. The universe answered in the way the universe often does, with more flatulence. By the third round, someone nearby, an earnest man in a tank top, attempted to migrate to a different machine as if spatial movement could disarm the offense. Others tried to laugh it off. A woman with a pink headband clapped a towel to her face like a valiant mask. But there was no masking it. Aroma and sound had conspired against civility. This was not a single heroic blast. It was a campaign. A platoon of small, low-frequency offensives with a reach that betrayed both timing and confidence. Whoever the ringleader was, he possessed a brazen sense of rhythm. Loud, patient, triumphant. A sound performer with a disregard for acoustics, a sense of freedom in bodily functions that some might call natural and others call a public hazard. Mark's reaction, the one that would later be recounted with the cadence of a small-town legend during coffee breaks and award show monologues, was one of incredulous diplomacy. He tried, in his way, to be the polite man of the world. He made eye contact. He attempted a gentle, "Come on, man." By gentle, he meant the sort of look that engineers use when defusing a bomb, calm, kind, like presenting an alternative route for someone who is obviously lost. The offender, however, answered with the audacity of someone who believed they were practicing a high art. After a while, the whole episode assumed an almost biblical dimension in Mark's memory. He remembers the sound pattern as if it were drum beats: loud, pause, soft, louder, and then for dramatic effect, an extended exclamation point. There was, for a moment, a man on a bicycle machine who began to pedal with dramatic vigor, as if accelerating could somehow counteract the stagnant atmosphere. Another gym-goer pulled up his hoodie, a flimsy fortress against olfactory invasion. When he recounted the story later, his eyes did a thing that people only do when they have returned from the edge of civilization and have a tale to tell. Kelly laughed, the kind of laugh that recognizes the absurdity of life, and is a little grateful it wasn't her in a crossfire, and they both leaned into the comic horror of it. The incident became, in that way celebrities' lives often do, a public parable, even at two-story gyms with polished floors and ethically sourced bottled water. Civilization is tenuous. The news cycle, as if summoned by the magnitude of the tale, labeled it the gassy gym horror. Social media judges weighed in with memes and GIFs. Trainers offered both lament and advice: eat less beans before workouts. And an enterprising researcher somewhere pitched an idea for smart underwear that could tell you when your colon was about to go on stage. The whole thing smelled like satire and possibility. In the retelling, Mark grew theatrical. He invented a private rating scale, the rank of Ripper, he joked, which would rate passes on criteria like volume, timbre, duration, and crucially, stealth. He speculated about whether the perpetrators were doing it for sport, for attention, or simply because they were blissfully unaware. He imagined a world where gym etiquette pamphlets included a polite clause: if you must release, please proceed to the designated saccharine-scented booth. But this was not merely a story about farts. It was, he realized, a story about boundaries. The gym is a small democracy. People voluntarily share air, space, and the silent contract of mutual respect. When that contract is broken, whether by careless noise or inconsiderate odor, the social fabric frays for a moment. People don't want confrontation at the treadmills. They want the quiet intensity of their own playlists, the meditative thump of effort, the small private victory when the last rep is finished. A rogue sonic emission threatens those tidy private victories. At dinner that night, Kelly, who has an ear for the theatrical nuance of such anecdotes, prodded him for detail. "You looked him in the eye," she said. "What did you say, exactly?" "Like, come on, man," Mark answered, the phrase stretching into comedic perfection. He liked the fact that he had tried to be a gentleman. He liked that he hadn't retaliated with an equally vulgar sound. He liked, in retrospect, that he had tried to be the adult in a room suddenly filled with the emotional life of digestive systems.